Learning as a schutz for Shlem Filan Chai Baserach. We are on the bottom. We're in the bottom of Beis Amud Aleph and Masechtas Horiyus. Second line from the bottom. So the Mishnah had said that if Bezdin made a Hoira and a Yachid did it b'shoigig al piyam, they're going to be potter. And we said bein she'asu v'asi achareim, bein she'lo yasu v'asa, or bein she'asu v'asi iman, bein she'asu v'asa achareim, bein she'lo yasu v'asa. It said three levels: whether the Bezdin did it together with him, or Bezdin did it first and he did it afterwards, or whether Bezdin didn't do it at all. On all of them, the Yachid is going to be potter because he did it with the Hoira. What did I have to say? All these different examples of what Bezdin did. It's coming to tell you, even the biggest chiddush, even when the person had the most responsibility, where Bezdin had not done anything, still the Yachid is going to be, nevertheless, is going to be potter. He's not going to be considered to be a shoigig where he did it on his own. But then the Mishnah continued and it said, if a member of Bezdin or a student who was Roy Lahaira, who should have known better, if they followed Bezdin and they were over, for example, they ate the chaylev, they're going to be chayiv. In that case, it's not loizu afsu. In that case, we're saying the chayiv, it's the smallest chiddush that the chayiv, when Bezdin themselves actually didn't do it. So it should be the other way around. So Gemara zu ve'in tzarich loimer zuktani. It could be loizu afsu, or it could be zu ve'in tzarich loimer zu. The biggest chiddush is taka, the first thing, and the next thing is less of a chiddush, and the last thing is even less. So the Mishnah continued, and like we said if a yachid who does b'cheiros bezdin generally is going to be potter, at least that's the shita of our Mishnah. We're going to see the Zaman Damuz Chaylik. But we said an exception to that shita, and even if you hold that a yachid is going to be potter, if one of the members of the bezdin, so he know he was making a mistake, and he still was over, a talmud or a talmud who was sitting by the bezdin and he knows how to paskin, and he still ate the chaylev because of the direction of the bezdin. So Kumar Tarti Lamali, what do I have to tell you? A member of the bezdin or a talmud, if a person knows what the halacha really is and he is over anyway, what difference does it make whether he's part of the bezdin or not? Maybe it's only someone who both is gomer, which Rashi says he knows the halachas, v'saver, and he's maven davar mitoch davar. Aval gomer v'loy saver loy. But maybe someone, even if he knows halachas, but if he's not such a talmid chacham that he knows how to analyze on his own and figure out the halacha, maybe such a person will not be chayiv. He doesn't have the confidence. So if Bezdin paskin to do it and he listened to them, maybe he'll be potter. Amalei Abaya Lohira Gom. So maybe that's what it's coming to tell you. Amalei Abaya Lohira Gom v'Sava Mashma. If a person's paskin and it's not enough just to know facts. You can't have an AI paskining halachas. It has to be, which is just basically regurgitating what the knowledge is, which is a gomir. You must be also a saver in order to be someone who's roy lahaira. So the pasuk. So when the Mishnah says roy lahaira, that means someone who's both gomir and saver. I'm not trying to say that when it says Talmud v'roy lahira, that means someone who's gomer v'loy saber. He's saying if we would have just said the case of the member of Bezdin who made a mistake, I would say it's only if he's a gomer v'saber. For the fact that we said a second case, even though the second case itself is not mashma that it's talking about a gama v'lei savar, but from the fact that we said an extra case, I feel gama v'lei savar, savar v'lei gama. It means to include either one. That it's even gomer v'loi saver or saver v'loi gomer. If he has that level of knowledge, he's still going to be chayiv. Roy lohira. So we said in the Mishnah, if you have a Talmud who is roy lohira, and he listens to the bezdin when the bezdin says you could eat chaylev, which is obviously false, he's going to have to bring a carbon chatas because he really knew that bezdin was incorrect.
So according to Robert, this last teretz, in other words, he's saying that at the end of the day, a Talmud who's just gomer but loy savir, he would also be chayiv.
This is that Rava Amar Rava Itzra? Abu Gomer v'lei saver loy. So he's saying to Taka Gomer v'lei saver and saver v'lei gomer. Sounds like either one, which is a chedesh saver v'lei gomer. It's hard to understand, but I guess it means he's a maven davar mitech davar, even though he didn't learn the halacha of chaylev, but he knows the pasuk and he could deduce it on his own. So it's hard. It's hard to grasp the concept of a saver v'lei gomer. What is that? I'm not exactly sure what kind of Talmud Chacham that is, right? Because we know that if you just know how to learn without knowing anything, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. So in any case, so the Gemara says, "Roy larak goin man, Amar Rabba goin Shimon ben Azai v'Shimon ben Zayma." These are two examples of Talmidei Chachamim that were nifter very young, and they never got smicha, but they were very chashav at Talmidei Chachamim. So they are people that if they follow the bezdin, they're still going to have to bring a korban chatas because they're not treated as shaygigim, or not treated as that they did it but they did it on their own. It was their own fault. Amalei Baya ki hay gavna mezid hu. Baya says, you have to take it all the way to the logical extreme. If you're saying it's their fault, they're not a shaygig. They're saying I ate chaylev, I thought it was mutter, but we know you're a Talmud Chacham, so you're not really a shaygig, you're amazed, you know better. If you're going to say it's amazed, well, that which says in the Brisa, ba'asoisa achas. So the pasuk says, "V'nefesh achas sechta b'shkaga me'am haaretz." When he does a shaygig from one of the people of the nation, when he does one of the mitzvahs, so we darshan achas, it has to be ba'asoisa. So a yachid who does it on his own is going to be chayiv, but if he does it by rosh bezdin potter. Ketzad, the Brisa continues, Hayrei bezdin shechelev mutter v'noidel echem hen sheto oitamid yoshev v'tein v'roi le'ra kan Shimon ben Azai. If bezdin paskin the chelev is mutter, and one of the members of bezdin was aware that it was a mistake, or one of the talmidim who was sitting there, and he was roi le'ra, and he was similar. And we give an example of Shimon ben Azai, which was one of the people that we said before didn't have smicha, but was a Talmud Chacham. Yachol ye potter, maybe they should also be potter. Talmud laim b'asaisa achas. Yachol es al pi atzmei chai by Rosh Bezdin potter. So it's only if they do it by Rosh Bezdin, and they did not do it by Rosh Bezdin because they knew better. They knew that Bezdin was incorrect. Ela heichi mishkachas lo. So the Gemara is asking, so what must be the explanation of this brisa? It's saying that Shimon ben Azai was going to be chayiv when he did by Rosh Bezdin, but you made a taina that l'chayra he should be amazed. So how is it that he's going to be able to be chayiv? He's not going to be amazed. He's going to be considered a shaygig. You must understand that the reason why Shimon ben Azai is going to have to bring a carbon chatas as a shaygig is because even though he knows the halacha is that chaylev is asa, but he also knows that there's a mitzvah l'shmaya divrei chacham, and the Rishonim will ask the question that even if we all know that the loy saser We saw the Gemara that says that even if they say al yamin shu small, al small shu yamin, you have to follow them. So they ask why are they talking out right? They're saying that they made a mistake. The Shimon ben Azai made a mistake. If he would make a mistake and eat the chaylev because Bezdin said, why wouldn't he be required to follow Bezdin? So, but in any case, that's what the Gemara says. So his mistake is in the mitzvah l'shmei devei chacham, not in what the halacha is. So that's the way I'm going to answer. Also, your taina. It's really I'm not exactly sure what the brisa added. That means we're saying that you're saying I'm bringing you a raya for the brisa. He's just giving a svara in the brisa. I don't know why he couldn't give the svara on our Mishnah the same way. It just, I guess, because we said Shimon ben Azai, so maybe the other Mandama would say it's someone who's not as knowledgeable.
So when the Mishnah says that the Talmud or someone on Bezdin themselves is chayev, you're talking about where they weren't chayev the mitzvah l'shmei devei chachamim?
No, it also is. But he had explained the Mishnah. It's talking about someone. We asked who's the Talmud Haroy Loy. We said like Shimon ben Azai, who's a tremendous Talmud Chacham.
In other words, that's the.
So he said, but if it's Shimon ben Azai, why isn't it a vada? Why isn't he amazing? So we said, just like in the brisa, we have to explain it's Tobin, which said specifically Shimon ben Azai. I don't know why he couldn't have just directly said this svara about his shot in the Mishnah. I don't know what. In other words, why would it be better if we weren't talking about Shimon Azai? I guess the idea is it's a Talmud Haroy Lo Hira that could theoretically make such a mistake, but Shimon Azai, we can't imagine he would. I mean, Shimon Azai should be amazing. We said in the Mishnah, we said this. First, we said the rule. We gave examples that someone who did an avera by himself, meaning, and we gave the examples of one of the members of Bezdin or Talmud, so they were told ba'atzma they're chayev. But then the Mishnah at the end says a catch-all explanation. It gives a klal, it gives a rule that whoever is told ba'atzma is chayev. Lasuya mai. What is this coming to include? Lasuya mevayit b'hira. It's coming to include, in addition to the cases that we give, also somebody who generally doesn't follow Talmidei Chacham. And there was a psak from Bezdin that Chelev is Asur, but he doesn't listen to Bezdin. He's now saying, I don't want to bring a carbon because I followed Bezdin. So we say, no, you don't listen to Bezdin, so you were Taila Ba'atzme. Don't blame it on the fact that Bezdin said you should do it. Then we said, Taila Bezdin is Pater Lasuye. What is that coming to teach you? What is the klal of Taila Bezdin is Pater? What is that telling you? Lasuye Hayru Bezdin biyadu shetov v'chazru b'hen. Where Bezdin made a hayra, Bezdin said Chelev is mutter, and then 2 days later they got together. They said, we made a huge mistake, and it's mutter. And a yachid had heard about that. They said it's mutter, and they did it after Bezdin was a rezi chayzer. So we're saying he's still going to be potter because of the rule that if he's Taila Bezdin, he's potter. This is a Mishnah later on. Tani v'hadam efarish. The one says Einachanami. The next Mishnah in a couple of blot is going to be explaining this klal. This klal is to first say the rule, and then later on we're going to explain it. Amar Yehuda Mishmos. This next Gemara, I will tell you, I probably chazed it like 8 times, and it's the girsa is not great, and it's very difficult to understand. But we're going to work our way through. Probably going to have to go a little more quickly than I would like, but that's what we got to do. Amar Yehuda Mishmos. Zu divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda Mishmos says that our Mishnah that says a yachid who was over behayros bezdin, that they're going to be potter, meaning that we de-link the heter, that when something is done by Ros Bezdin, there's 2 things. First of all, you bring a carbon parhelam davish al tzibur, and secondly, the yachid is potter from bringing a carbon. So he said we say this will be the case, even if it's a yachid meaning not a roiv of the tzibur. We only bring a parallel davar shel tzibur if roiv of the tzibur was over, but not if it was less than a roiv. But even if it's less than a roiv, but you don't bring the parallel davar shel tzibur, the yachid, since he did it by Ras Bezdin, is still potter. He says zu divrei Rabbi Yehuda. That is Rabbi Yehuda who's saying like our Mishnah. The Chum disagree. They say yachid she'asa by Ras Bezdin chayiv. They say if a yachid was over by Ras Bezdin, they're still going to be chayiv unless the actual parallel davar tzibur is brought. The yachid has to bring a carbon chatas. My Rabbi Yehuda, where do we see that Rabbi Yehuda says like our Mishnah? The Tanya. The pasuk says, this is the pasuk of the regular carbon chatas when someone does a shegig. When he does a shiggas maisen, not a shgaga because of a Ras Bezdin, but he did a shgaga himself. So if he does one of the mitzvahs, harei elu gimel miyutim. So we learn from this gimel miyutim. Rashi says im nefesh sechta and achas sechta ba'asoisa sechta. We learn from each of these three things different things. Harei elu gimel miyutim. There are three miyutim, and the last one is to tell you that if someone does on its own, he's going to be chayiv by Ras Bezdin potter. So that's coming to tell you, even if he does by Ras Bezdin, and there's no parhalam davar shel tzibur because it's a yachid, he's still going to be potter from bringing a carbon chatas. So that's like our Mishnah, and we're saying this is Rabbi Yehuda. Even though we didn't see Rabbi Yehuda, it doesn't say Rabbi Yehuda's name. The Gemara later on is going to ask how we know this is Rabbi Yehuda, and the next brisa that's like the Rabbanan is like the Rabban. So Rabbi Yehuda is fairly simple. The next part is the complicated part. My Rabbanan. Where do we see that the Rabbanan are chaylik on our Mishnah? And they say a yachid that does Ras Bezdin is going to be chayiv. The Tanya, Adayin ani oimer. This Mishnah is talking. This brisa is talking about someone who I would say that the pasuk says that if someone does a shaygig, he has to bring a carbon chatas. I might say that more than it's only if it's a yachid, it's a single person who does a shaygig, but more than a yachid is going to be potter. It's only on a. Let's see if the Rashi says it. No, it doesn't say. So, Tanya, I would say, even though we have a pasuk to tell you that even more than one person who is over who did a shaygig still brings the carbon. Adani, I'm a miyat kal shachatu chayavin she'em bezem mevin al yidei par. I would still say that a miyat, if it's not a majority that brings a par, but it's a miyat that doesn't bring a par, where there's no that Bezdin doesn't bring a par, yidei par, they would be chayiv. Roiv kahal shechatu yeh pturin, and I would say, but maybe a roiv kahal shechatu yeh pturin shei Bezdin mevin al yidei par, because Bezdin does bring a par for a roiv kahal. And again, we're going to have to explain what this means. What is this case? Is it talking about where it was chatu be shigig esmaisa, where they made a shigig, or was it shto b'heiros Bezdin? I would say that where a roiv of the kahal did a shgaga, they should be potter because Bezdin does bring a parallel davar for them. It says me'am haaretz. Am is a lashon of the am of the nation. Afilu rubo, even if it's roiv the kalva, afilu kula, even if it's the entire nation, they're still going to be chayiv to bring a carbon. So b'mai, what is this talking about? If we're talking about, what we're addressing in this brisa is where we said a yachid, we say is chayiv when he did a shogeg, a shiggas maisa, and we're trying to prove that that's also the case, even if Roiv or the entire nation did a shiggas maisa, but without a hayros bezdin. Bezdin, I think we leave out those next words. Bezdin ma'aviditayu. You have to, again, this is very hard to read these words. Bezdin ma'aviditayu shalebaras bezdin. This is what is Bezdin doing here? There's no. We're saying that Shari Bezdin Mevin al Yidei Empire. Bezdin doesn't bring. There's no kavami. There's nothing to discuss about Bezdin being a par by Yeshigas Ma'is. It's only by Ro's Bezdin. Bezdin Ma'is Shaloi by Ro. Ella by Ro. I'm sorry. Maybe the Ma'is Shaloi by Ro. Does Bezdin bring without a Ro? There's no possibility of bringing par halam davar where Bezdin didn't make up psak. Ella b'hayra. So it must be saying that the discussion in the brisa that said that a yachid is going to be chayiv or a miyat is going to be chayiv, but I would think that a ruba is going to be pater talmud loimer me'am haaretz. me'am haaretz b'shigas ma'isa hudichsiv. This pasuk me'am haaretz is not discussing b'hayra. You can't say it's talking about where it was b'hayra. It's talking about a shiggas ma'isa. This is the generic standard. This is the pasuk that talks about a generic standard chatas where someone made a mistake and he didn't realize that there was chaylev. Elav hachikar. So what? So we were a little stuck about what is this brisa meaning. So it must be meaning like this: Miyat kal shechatu b'shiggas ma'isa chayab. A miyat kal that a minority of the kahal that did a shigas ma'isa chayav, and they're chayiv she'en bezdin mevin al yidei par b'hoira, because if there would be a hoira, bezdin would not bring a carbon on them. Hahein chayavin, but the Gemara says. So you see from here that if bezdin is not maybe a par al yadein, but it's mashma. But the yachid, who when they were over al yedei hayros bezdin, would have to bring a carbon. So this is the raya. This is the raya that the chachamim are disagreeing with our Mishnah, and they're saying, because of the diak of what the brisa is saying, for the fact that the brisa is saying that if a miyat of the kahal did a shigas ma'isa the chayiv, because bezdin is not maybe a paral yadein, it's mashma, but they themselves do have to bring a carbon. Zok the Mishnah, Zok the brisa yachol roiv tziba she'asa b'shigas ma'isa yehei p'tur. And so we continue with our analysis of the brisa. So if that's the case, maybe the brisa says maybe the roiv tziba also should she'asa b'shigas ma'isa, they should be potter. Because maybe on that, if Roiv of the Kahal did a Shigas Maisa, since if there was a Hayros Bezdin, they would bring a carbon, a par, so maybe when they do a Pishkaga, they should be potter. Tamid Len Marar, it's Afilu Rubai, Afilu Kulai. So that's what the pasuk is coming to tell you, that we don't say that a Roiv of the Kahal that did a Shigas Maisa, they should be put. Amar Papa, Mimai, this is not necessary. What you're saying is not, it's not muchach. In the inference that you're making is not muchach. You're saying from the fact that we said that by a miyah, that if Bezdin was Hayra, they would be maybe a par. You're saying that that's medayik, but that the yachid is going to be chayiv, or the miyat is going to be chayiv, a carbon. It's not so true. Maybe Bezdin doesn't bring a param davashal tzibur, and the yachid or the miyat doesn't bring a chatas. Dr. Mari, so he says back to Rav Papa, but I'll tell you why I was saying that. Because what are you trying to say? What's making you think that the Roiv should be, we're saying maybe a Roiv is also Potter. If the Yachid does not bring, is Taka Potter for bringing a Chatas. Why would we think that? Why would we think that? Why are we talking about whether a Roiv? We're trying to say maybe a Roiv should be Potter. Talmud Leimer. If we're just talking about, we're saying that a Yachid is going to be Chayiv when Yachid obviously is Chayiv. Sorry, Yachid or a Miyat is obviously Chayiv if there's no Hayros Bez. And there's no, if we're talking about a Shigas Maisa, there's nothing to be Potter them, right? One could contemplate that a Roiv of the Tzibur that did a Maisa Bishkaga would say, since in the same circumstance, Bahayros Bezdin is Potter, they would bring a Param Davish Tzibur, so they'd be Potter. So maybe when they do a Shigas Maisa, they'll also be Potter. But
even though there's no Hayros Bezdin.
Even though there's no Hayros Bezdin, but in other circumstances it's Potter, so maybe it's also. But if we're saying that a Yachid that we're talking about, Stam, you want to say that everyone is Potter from bringing a carbon Bahayros Bezin. So there's no distinction. Everyone is exactly the same. There's no difference between a Miyat and a Roiv. A Miyat is going to be Potter Bahayros Bezin, and the Yachid is going to, and a Roiv is going to be Potter Bahayros Bezin. So why are we saying maybe a Roiv is also Potter? There's no difference between them. My area, the Kamahada Arubal Chayuba. La Mechlal, the Miyat Bahayra Kaimele, the Mechayve Bahayra. Is it not because that Miyat Bahayra, that it must be, like I had suggested, that a Miyat, when there's a Hayra, there's still Chayiv on a Lav. And now we want to say, but maybe a Roiv should be Potter. And that, so and what does that mean? So the Gemara explains. So we want to say first we're going to look for a miyat that it should be mechoyev b'shigas ma'isa, and then we want to say maybe a roiv also should be mechoyev b'shigas ma'isa. From the fact that we're not mahad al miyat and mechayim b'shigas ma'isa, I know there's a wrong. Elav midemahader. I think you take out midaloi. That right? That's what the Meser Sashas takes out the word midaloi. Elav midemahader al miyat and mechayim b'shigas ma'isa. So it must be that first we're saying that you're mechoyev b'shigas ma'isa, which you'd be chayiv even when there's a hayros bezin. And then we go also to try to find where there's a roiv that was over b'shigas ma'isa, that it's also going to be chayiv. Shma mino miyat b'hayra chayiv and henkis b'vesir v'shalai b'hayra b'shigas ma'isa chayav. So you see from here that a miyat, even when it's hayras bezdin, they're still going to be mechoyev the regular carbon of a chatas. And without hayra, they're always going to be chayiv the regular. Obviously, shaloi b'hayra, they're going to be chayiv the regular shigas ma'isa. Okay, so that is the raya, that this is where we get that the chachamim disagree with our Mishnah. This is the chachamim that say that a yachid sha'asa b'hayras bezdin is going to be mechoyev a carbon chatas. We brought two brises. The first brise we said is Rabbi Yehuda, who says like our Mishnah, and the second brise we're saying is the Chachamim, who disagree with our Mishnah. Both of them, neither of them identified who's saying what shita. They're both stomachs. How do you know that the first one is Rabbi Yehuda and the second, the one that says like our Mishnah, that a yachid is going to be Potter is like Rabbi Yehuda, and the Basraisa is the Rabban, the second one that disagrees is the Rabban. Ema Ipcha. So Man Shamalei Darsh Miyuta Ki Haigavna Rabbi Yehudi. Gemara says the first lima that we said, there are 3 miyutim, and the last one is to be memayit, that a yachid or miyat that was over by Ros Bezdin is going to be potter. That format of darshaning 3 miyutim, Rabbi Yehuda darshans another place. Tanya Yehuda Aimer Zeis Tyrus Ailahi Hareelu Shloisha miyutim. It's saying there are 3 oilas that are memayit, 3 different types of oilas, 3 different circumstances which are oilas. So we have this shloisha miyutim, this format of shloisha miyutim we already found by Rabbi Yehuda. So over here also we're going to dash in shloisha miyutim. That's one right. Viva seima adayin in yomer le'matzas mukal Rabbi Yehuda. Another reason why is because the second lima that we said is like the chachamim, has to be like the chachamim because Rabbi Yehuda doesn't hold like it. The Tani Rav Kahal Shechatu Bezdin Shechatu. If most of the Kahal did a chait, Bezdin Mavin Al Yadein Par. We said in the Brisa that if Rav the Kahal Shechatu, Bezdin brings the carbon Par Halam Davar Shal Tzibur before them. We Rabbi Yehuda Amar Tzibur Huda Maisi. Bezdin Loi. Rabbi Yehuda holds that the Bezdin is not the one who brings the Par Halam Davar Shal Tzibur, but rather it's brought by the Kahal. It's not brought by Bezdin. It's not Rabbi Yehuda Aimer. Shiva Shvatim Shechatu may be in Zayin Parim. If 7 Shvatim from Klal Yisrael, 7 out of the 12 Shvatim did chait, each one brings their own par. So you see, it's not the Bezdin. It's all one Bezdin that made a Hayrot. There's not 7 separate. It's talking about the Bezdin of Shivim Ve'echa. So if you say you bring 7 parim from the Shvatim, that's not obviously not Bezdin. That's brought by the Kal. Nachman Mashmuel Zudivir Mei Avacham. Nachman Shmuel says it's not a machlekes Rabbi Yehuda and the Chacham, but rather it's a machlekes Rabbi Meir and the Chacham. Rabbi Meir is the man Amar who says like our Mishnah. It's still the Chachamim who argue. My Rabbi Meir, my Rabbanon. Where do we get that it's Rabbi Meir and the Rabbanon who are arguing rather than Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanon, like we said on Amud Beis? The Tanya. Hayru Asu. If Bezdin made a Hayrah and then they did the thing that they paskin the chayil of his mutter, and then they did it. Man us. So who are we saying that Elam with Bezdin? If we're saying Bezdin did what they said, my time they're under Machayvi. Why would the Rabbanon say that you're chayiv? The Bezdin, like we said, Bezdin should know better. Tanya Yachal Hayru Bezdin Vasu Bezdin Yachal Yechayav and Tamal Kol Vasu. Maisa Tali Bakal Vayra Tluya Bezdin. Bezdin is only chayiv for the hayrah. They would not, if Bezdin were the only ones who are over, there would not be this din of that you bring a par halam davashal tzibah. So it can't be saying Bezdin was made a hayrah and then they did it, then you bring a par halam davar. There's no such thing. Ela hayru Bezdin, Elamai, it's when Bezdin made hayrah v'asurav kal. So my time, so it's where Bezdin made a psak and Raiva the Kal did it. My time they made the paita. What does Rameh mean? They pata. That's a classic din of Paralim Davashal Tziba. They made a psak and Raiva the Kal followed it erroneously. Elalav Hayru Bezdin. We're talking about where Bezdin made a Hayru. Also miyuta Kal. It's when it says asu, it means a miyut of the Kal. One says Yachach by Yoretz Bezdin Potter, like our Mishnah. Umar Sava, which, and that's Remeir. Umar Sava Yachach also by Yoretz Bezdin Chayiv. The Chum say it's Chayiv, like this brisa that we brought in Amud Beis. Amar Papa, no. The Kul Yam Yachach also by Yoretz Bezdin Potter. Everyone agrees that a Yachach also by Yoretz Bezdin. Allah Bezdin. Masham l'roiv tzibur kamifli. This machlokes, this brisa that we just quoted, that Asu, that Remeir and the Chachamim are arguing when Bezdin was Hayra and Paskind, they were Hayra v'Asu, that it's Remeir says it's Potter, and the Chum say it's Chayiv. They're arguing about a different thing. We're talking about whether we had 50-50 of the Kahal was followed Hayrah, and Bezdin also followed Hayrah, and that tips it over to a Rav. Masava Bezdin Masham L'Rav Tzibur. The Chacham who say Chayev say that the Bezdin is included to make it a Roiv Tzibur. Masava ain't Bezdin Masham Roiv Tzibur. Bezdin is not included to make it a Roiv. Biba say Maharu Bezdin Vasu Ruba Shel Kahal. We're talking about Haru Bezdin, and most of the Kahal followed them. Uman Chacham Rav Shimoni, and who are the Chacham who say Chayev Rav Shimoni. The Amar Tzibur Maisi U Bezdin Maisi. He holds that there are two separate Kavanas Parhalim Davar Shel Tzibur. One is brought by the Tzibur, and one is brought by the Bezdin. So when it says Chayiv, it means that in addition to the Bezdin bringing, in addition to the Tzibur bringing, the Bezdin also brings. And that's what Rameir is disagreeing. You say, no, the Bezdin doesn't bring. The Iba Yisema, or maybe it's the other way around. I'm not sure. They're arguing about Tzibur probably. The Iba Yisema, Shavit's also by Ras Beis Dinai. We're talking about a Shavit that did it with the Hira of their own Bezdin. Uman Chacham Rabbi Yehudi. This is Rabbi Yehuda, Tanya Shavit's also by Ras Beis Dinai. Oisa Shavit Chayiv. That Shavit is Chayiv, so the Chum say Chayiv, and Meir will say it's Pater. We're talking about 6 Shvatim that don't equal up to half of the entire nation, or 7 Shvatim, even though they are not the Roiv Kal. Maseisamani Reb Shimon Elazar, the time of Shimon Elazar, Aimer Mashmoi says over Chatu Shisha Vehin Rubish Kal, Ashiva Alpha Bishain Rubish Kal, Chayavin. Either one of those is enough to be mechayiv. So that's what the Chum say chayiv and Rameir says what. Okay, we'll stop over here and we'll finish this tomorrow because this is a different. We're finished with that. Iba is saying this.
Thank you. Have a great day.
We'll try to